How's it going, guys? This is our first vlog reflection. I'm John.
I'm Nick.
I'm Caden.
I represent the French and Italian culture.
I represent the Irish culture.
I represent the Australian and Middle Eastern cultures.
We all represent the same cultures. We all have the same values, but it differs when it comes to grandparents, elders, and all that. One of the big differences for me in the Irish culture is our biggest holiday is St. Patrick's Day.
Our biggest holiday is Christmas.
And our biggest holiday we celebrate is Ramadan.
Now we're going to get into a couple questions with our interviewee. The first one is, how does each culture communicate with the elderly? That's a big one.
So on the Middle Eastern side of how I'm culturally am, distance is a big factor. My dad has 7 siblings and not one is in the United States. So if I wanted to go see like my grandparents or my cousins and uncles, they all moved to Canada, most of them. So I'd have to drive 6.5 hours to go see them. So that's the only way I can really go see them.
Which is interesting because the majority of my family all lives within, a short flight or a short car ride.
Yeah, same thing with ours. Ours are very close. I'm like a short car ride, maybe 25 minutes, and it's great to have them close by.
Our next question for Caden will be, what are the roles of men and women like in your culture?
So growing up, culture in the Middle East is having a big family. So my dad had 7 brothers and 1 sister. So due to this, his mom did not work and his dad just provided for the family because she needed to look after his 8 siblings. So that was basically the main role she needed to provide for the family.
Yeah, I think in the Irish culture as well that it's a lot of big families, but our roles are more men do like the outside labor kind of work. They work, and then the woman, my grandmother was saying how she always cooked meals. She was always inside taking care of the kids.
Similar situation for me. Personally, my experience is both my parents were working. So our next question for Caden is, how are the major holidays celebrated?
So the major holidays are celebrated. The biggest one is Ramadan because my dad comes from a Muslim background, and it's very different like around American like holidays because Americans can eat whenever they want and we have to eat when the sun is down and not appeared.
Yeah, I think with the Irish culture we have this big festival, and we have a pot boil. It's awesome. It's just a mix of cultures. It's pretty sweet.
Christmas is celebrated pretty standardly. Just as much family as that's able to come that day. We just celebrate with the good food and gift openings. So our next interviewee is Matt Young. Matt Young represents the Chinese. So the first question we're going to ask you is, how does the Chinese culture communicate with the elderly?
Okay, so basically, on my dad's side of the family, both my grandparents speak English, so communicating with them is a little different than communicating with my grandparents on my mom's side who don't speak any English at all. So growing up, whenever I would go over to their house, a lot of our communication would revolve around food and meals, and especially eating at like a round table. That's how we communicated the majority of the time.
How are major holidays celebrated in your culture?
So I would say our biggest holiday would be Chinese New Year, which happens around every February. And basically, that's like a big family tradition. And we're supposed to wear red that day. And then you're supposed to go visit your grandparents and you say, Gong Hei Fat Choi, Sunny Fai Lao, which means Happy New Year and wishing you good health. And then for dinner, my mom will usually make 8 dishes, which is a good luck. It's a lucky number in Chinese culture.
There we go. So in class, we had recently talked about Hofstede's cultural dimensions and that there's 6 of them. The first one is individual versus collective. Individualism values soloism, and collectivism values the benefit of the group.
Yeah.
What do you feel like your culture values more, soloism or collectivism?
I would have to say collectivism, just because, I come from a big family, and we're around each other a lot of the times, and then all of our holidays revolve around each other and connecting with each other. So I would say collectivism.
I feel like the Irish culture really represents that too. It's a big family. They all stick together. Continuing with our interviewees, for number 3, here's Jack.
I represent the Colombian culture.
So we're going to hop into the first question. This is also part of Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Has to do with masculinity versus femininity.
A big one.
So growing up, did you learn that there was any differences between men and women in society?
Well, both my grandparents on my mom's side, they both worked in factories, but I did notice that my grandfather never would let my grandmother drive. So I felt that that was big. She still doesn't drive to this day.
Interesting. How about in the Italian culture? Does that happen at all?
Not really, no. I mean, there's basic chivalry. There's basic chivalry in the Italian culture, but other than that, I wouldn't say there's much.
Okay. One question I have for you, Jack, is what are different idioms in the Colombian culture? I know for the Irish culture, and we all represent the American culture, but one of the big ones, this means pound sand. So what are some things in the...
Well, this one might not be as intense as his, but chewing gum with your mouth open was always seen as really bad. My mom always taught me to never do that.
So wrapping up our interviews, we clearly learned that there is a difference between the three cultures, from Caden on the Middle Eastern side of things, with Matt on the Chinese culture, and finishing up with Jack on the Colombian culture.
Also, we realized there's a lot of relevant things that we learned in class that we saw in these interviews. Example is the Hofstedes, when it was the individual versus collectivism, or if it was the masculinity versus the femininity. Each culture has their own different values, beliefs, and regarding these different dimensions, I think Hofstede created a very valid point.
Thank you.